Hello and welcome to English 203, Introduction to Literary Study. I'll be your professor, Dr. Sam Lackey. You can call me Dr. Lackey, Mr. Lackey, or Sam if you would prefer to be on a first name basis. Just try to avoid hey you or idiot or any profane utterance. So I'm excited to get started. I hope you are too. This is our introductory lecture. So I will keep it brief. I just want to provide a brief overview of the class, let you know what to expect this semester. I'll talk a little bit about the syllabus, textbook, my weekly lectures, web campus, all of that sort of first day stuff. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about what this class is and sort of, what some of our overarching goals will be this semester. So what do we mean when we say literary study? I want us to think about that term a little bit and define it. So we're all sort of operating with the same definition. We should all be on the same page here to begin this semester. So when I think of literary study, I think, first of all, that's a very broad term that encompasses a lot of different things. But essentially, the way we should think about it is literary study includes the type of work that is done by literary scholars, literary critics, and advanced English students taking perhaps literature courses like you all are right now. So this is familiar work, I think, to most of us. We're talking about original interpretations and in-depth analysis of literary texts. The good news is that most of us have done some of this type of work before in previous classes in slightly different contexts. But now we're going to get more systematic, we're going to get more careful, and we're going to acquire more tools and strategies and methods that will help us to do this type of work, that will allow us to do the type of interpretive, analytical work that we need to do at this level. So in order to arrive at these original interpretations, in order for us to do interesting things with the literary text that we read, we need tools. And I'm going to provide some tools over the course of this semester. In fact, that's largely what I'm doing in this class. Each week, I'm going to give you a new approach, a new critical approach. You might see these as sort of sets of strategies. You might see these as schools or branches of literary criticism. Many of them could fit under that category. Some of these are also pre-critical techniques, however. So when we start on our actual material in the week 1 lecture, which is available right now in the week 1 module in Web Campus, we'll start out by talking about some pre-critical concepts that have really been around for millennia. We can also call these literary elements. These are sort of the building blocks, some of the foundational elements of literature, things that we're all familiar with: plot, setting, character, theme. So we're going to start there because that's familiar ground to most of us. You've perhaps learned those terms in a previous English class, maybe English 101. If you take my 101 here at GBC, we definitely cover a lot of those literary elements, albeit briefly. And it's 101, so we're not really doing them justice. But you might be familiar with them from 101, you might be familiar from high school, or possibly even middle school. So we start with those familiar terms because they are some of, again, the most foundational kind of building blocks that we can use when we are trying to analyze and interpret literature. But then we're going to move into some more traditional critical approaches that are kind of old by our standards. But, they've been used in some cases for hundreds of years by scholars and critics to do this type of work. But then pretty soon, I believe around week 3, when we move into formalism, we're going to really start talking about several different schools of literary criticism, which was a discipline that really developed over the course of the 20th century. in this country. So we're going to be looking at several approaches, several schools of thought that have been developed over the years that are commonly used to this day by, again, scholars, critics, and students. So these are important tools that we can learn, practice. Mastery might not be attainable this semester. This is more of a survey, so we're going to cover a lot of ground. We don't always have a ton of time to spend on each approach. In some cases, we might only spend a single week. For a couple of these approaches, for a couple of the chapters that we're reading in the book, we'll be devoting multiple weeks, maybe 2 in some cases, but we're moving fast, we're covering a lot of ground, but we will have opportunities to practice what we've learned, and we'll have some chances to apply some of what we've learned to texts of our choosing. So hopefully that sounds good. I'll leave it at that. I'll talk more about what we'll be doing in the week 1 lecture when we start talking about some of these pre-critical approaches. And once you read chapter 1 in our textbook, you'll sort of begin to see, I think, a little bit more what we're doing and how this is going to be structured. And I'll talk a little bit more about our weekly routine that we should expect and hopefully get used to over the course of this semester. So if you have any questions about kind of the overall aims of the class, feel free to email me, but you can also find some of that info in the course description, and some of that's in the syllabus as well, which is currently available in Web Campus. So let me move on and just talk about some general things that you need to know concerning Web Campus, our textbook, etc. So I like to keep things relatively simple in an online class. So generally, I will provide everything you need for each week at the beginning of that week in our course modules in Web Campus. So at the beginning of each week, let's just take week 1, for example. On Monday morning of week 1, I will publish the week 1 module. Everything that you need for the week can be found in that module. And again, we're keeping it pretty simple. So you'll have a few things to do each week. You'll have discussion posts. Most weeks we are doing discussion posts, and I'll have prompts available for you at the beginning of each week. These are informal, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes here in the introductory lecture. I don't want to get bogged down in any one thing, but you'll look for that week's discussion post. Sometimes there'll be a prompt, sometimes it'll be pretty open-ended, but everything you need for that week's post will be available. I'll also post the reading assignment for that week. Just a reminder, hey, this week we're reading chapter 1, and week 2 we're reading chapter 2. We're pretty much going in chronological order. We're just making our way through the textbook that I hope you have by now. But if you look at our course schedule, you'll notice that, as I mentioned, we are spending multiple weeks on a couple of these chapters. So sometimes we'll take a little longer to move through a chapter. So I'll post the reading, I'll post a discussion board post for that week, and then there'll also be a lecture recording just like this one. So if you're watching this, you already know how to access my lecture videos. I make them available in multiple places. I'll be embedding the videos. You can also just click on the URL. It's important that you watch these weekly lectures. I understand that many of us might sign up for online classes, at least in part, so we can avoid listening to professors lecture. But in a class like this, where we're covering a lot of ground and we're reading a lot of material from our textbook, I really think that weekly lectures are important. You need a little bit of information presentation at times, and I will be able to go over a lot of what we read. I might be able to smooth out some rough edges, show you some examples, and help you to digest all of the information that we are consuming each week. So those are the 3 basic pillars of each week for us: discussion post, reading assignment, and my lecture video. Now, of course, if we have a larger assignment due in a particular week, you'll see that as well. first thing Monday morning, whatever other assignment is due, whether it's a short critical response essay or one of our longer essays or potentially one of our alternative media assignments. If any of those are due in a given week, you'll see the deadline, you'll see the assignment description, the assignment link, essentially. You can click on it, read the description, and then you can also upload your file within that page. So everything you need for each week will be there at the beginning of the week. And everything is due at the end of weeks. So for me, a week begins first thing on Monday morning, and the week ends last thing on Sunday night. That means 11:59 p.m. on Sunday nights. That will pretty much always be my due date. Whenever something's due, it's due at the end of that particular week. So hopefully that makes sense. You can kind of poke around a little bit on Web Campus. I've already alluded to the course schedule. You can find that inside the course syllabus, which I've made available, but also you can just go to the schedule tab on that left-hand toolbar in Web Campus, and you can just look at the schedule all by itself. I also have all the assignments listed, so you can go into the assignments tab and take a look at all of our assignments. The due dates are there and the point values. But very quickly, I'll just run through them right now. I've already kind of mentioned them in passing. So we have two major essays that will serve as our midterm and final, respectively. We have no exams, no tests in this class, but we do have a midterm essay and a final essay. Those are obviously worth a lot of points. And then we have 3 critical response papers. Those will be shorter, more concise, but still polished. So we have 3 of those over the course of the semester. I think each one is worth 100 points. And then you will have 5 alternative media assignments. And I'll talk a little bit more about those probably as we get closer to the first one being due. But the link is already available. The first alternative media assignment is due at the end of week 2. So it's already visible in the week 1 module, and you'll later see it in the week 2 module as well. These are kind of low stakes, fun assignments, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in the week 1 lecture as well, because we're going to be using the term text in a very expansive, broad way. So these alternative media assignments will give you an opportunity to apply some of our literary approaches, some of these critical approaches that we can use for literature. We're going to apply them to other art forms, other artistic mediums. So you can apply these strategies, these methods, to all sorts of different things: movies, shows, music, whatever. So I'll talk more about that later. You'll have 5 of those assignments spaced out over the course of the semester, and they are shorter. And again, sort of low stakes. I think each one of those will be worth 20 points. And then you have your weekly discussion posts. We will be doing these almost every week. I'll give you a couple of weeks off. And when we have the big papers due in the middle and at the end of the semester, we won't have to worry about posting on those weeks. But most weeks, most ordinary weeks of the semester, I will expect you guys to do a discussion post. They're informal. They're supposed to be sort of low stress. They are meant to simulate the kinds of in-class discussions that we would be having in a traditional literature class. So in an online class, the discussion board approximates that in-class discussion sort of vibe. So that's what we're going for. I want you guys to interact with each other on the discussion board. I want you to respond to one another from time to time. And I will give you prompts. I will get you started each week. Sometimes I'll just essentially ask you to respond to what we read, but then other times I might give you more specific, focused discussion questions that you can either ignore totally if you have something else that you want to talk about, as long as it's related to what we're doing that week, or you can respond to my stuff. But more important than responding to me is that you respond to one another. So the ground rules are pretty simple. I want you to post every week, but you need to do a total of 10 is the ultimate goal. If you do 10 and get full credit on each one, you can max out and get the 100 points that are available for discussion posts as a whole. Okay, so you can gain up to 100 points if you do enough and if you're putting some thought and time into them. And I would like you to respond to your classmates at least a couple of times over the course of the semester. You can talk to one person or multiple. You don't have to do that every week, but it's nice to interact. We need to exchange ideas and help one another. That's what we would be doing in a live setting, so that's what we should be doing in an online setting as well. So if you have any questions about those assignments, let me know. I'll move on for now. So yeah, that's the weekly routine. You guys just need to get into the habit of checking out each week's module. And, I would recommend looking relatively early in the week. You don't have to do all the work early in the week, but you need to see what the reading assignment is. You need to make sure no big thing is due at the end of that week, or if it is, you need to be working on it. And you might want to take a peek at the discussion post and maybe get started on that. As for watching my lectures, I would actually recommend that you wait until later in the week, if possible. I know everyone's schedule is different, but my advice is read the textbook chapter that is assigned for that given week first. Read it on your own, take some notes, and then you can sit down and watch my lecture maybe on Thursday, Friday, or even over the weekend. But try to do it before the week ends on Sunday night of that week. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, just let me know. And again, I've been showing it to you. I know you probably can't see it here. Get the textbook, please. In some classes, it's not critical, it's not important. In this class, it is. Because virtually everything that we read will come from the book. And like I said, we're moving through it pretty chronologically, beginning in week 1 with chapter 1. The book's very readable. I'm going to kind of take us through chapter 1 a little bit during my week 1 lecture, and we'll get accustomed to this book. It's structured in a nice way. I think it works well for students. So I'm going to be covering what we're reading each week in my lectures. So my lectures will be there as a study guide, as an aid, but you should do the reading on your own and then check out my lectures. So between the book and my lecture recordings, you have all the information that you need and everything else that you need. Deadlines, info, schedules, everything is in Web Campus. So I'm happy to answer questions. You can always email me, but everything you need should be pretty easy to find on a weekly basis. But that does bring me to my final point before I sign off here in the introductory lecture. I just want to talk a little bit about communication. And I just want to stress the importance of you guys communicating with me and sort of keeping me in the loop, especially if you're falling behind, if you maybe miss a week of class, if you're out of town, if you have some kind of an emergency, if you are struggling with anything, with any of our class material, or if you're going to miss time, if you're just going to be away from home, away from your computer, away from class, just let me know and we can work out extensions. But if you want an extension on an assignment, you need to talk to me before the due date, not after the due date. I'm a pretty reasonable person. We can usually work out extensions, but just stay in touch. Let me know, talk to me, and we'll work something out. So, of course, email is the easiest way to communicate with me. I am based at the Winnemucca Center, so if any of you live near Winnemucca or in Winnemucca, you can always stop by and talk to me in person. I will be on campus twice a week this semester, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I do hold office hours in the mornings from 10 a.m. until noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm available to talk in person. We'll have to wear our masks, of course, but you can also email me. We can do video conferencing. We can talk on the phone, whatever you like. And I'm pretty available. I'm pretty accessible most of the time. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Take a look at the syllabus that I've posted in Web Campus. Again, take a look at the class schedule. It's both inside the syllabus, and you can just go to the schedule tab in Web Campus. Take a look at the week 1 module. Hopefully you already have your book. If you're having issues with the book, let me know. And I will see you soon in the week 1 lecture.